Unlike the novelizations of the prequel films, in which the authors got to directly talk with George Lucas and get his ideas behind the film, Karen Traviss didn't get any insider access to Lucas or the Lucasfilm animation team when working on the novelization of The Clone Wars. Instead, she was given the script and just told to go from there. Star Wars: The Clone Wars by Karen Traviss ultimately made it to number 13 on the New York Times bestseller list for the week of August 17th, 2008, and was ultimately on the list for 2 weeks. Now, back in the day, I did see the Clone Wars film. I wasn't particularly impressed by it, so I made no effort to seek out the novelization. So, like with a lot of the ones from this year's reread, I am approaching this book for the first time. So first, a brief summary. Jabba the Hutt's son, Baby Rota, has been captured by Count Dooku's separatist forces, and it will be up to Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, his new Padawan Ahsoka Tano, and the men of the 501st Legion to rescue the baby Huttlet and return him to his father. However, Count Dooku has decidedly other plans in play. So jumping back to the mid-2000s, the Clone Wars movie took a lot of people by surprise, including the staff of Lucasfilm Animation. They were working on a new 3D animated show that was due to come out in 2008 when George Lucas said, hey, why don't we turn this into a film? So they took an episode that was supposed to occur later in the season, a flashback episode, and had that be the first part of the movie, the Battle of Christophsis, in which Anakin and Ahsoka first meet, and then took a 3-parter about Count Dooku kidnapping Jabba's son and added that on as the last 3/4 of the movie. If the movie feels like a number of TV episodes smushed together, that's because it was, pretty much. Regardless, the novelization is a different beast. It's basically the same plot, the same dialogue as we see in the film, just fleshed out with insights into the characters, and getting to see their viewpoints sort of changes different aspects of the story. But if you haven't seen the Clone Wars 3D animated movie, what is the plot? Well, it's basically, yes, the Battle of Christophsis, Ahsoka arriving, meeting Anakin, not getting along super well, Anakin saying, I don't want a Padawan, I don't need a Padawan, but in the end, them working well together and achieving their goal of defeating the separatist forces. They're not on Christophsis very long, though, before they're told Jabba the Hutt's son has been kidnapped, and he's requesting that the Republic help. And one thing the novel does do that the movie really never does is say, well, wait, why would Jabba the Hutt contact the Republic? You'd think that Jabba has something at play here, but no, I guess he's just really desperate to get his little Huttlet back. So Obi-Wan heads to Tatooine to talk with Jabba, while Anakin and Ahsoka and Rex and the rest of the 501st guys head to the world of Teth, where the little baby Hutt is being held within a monastery. They have to scale the cliff to get to the monastery, and a bunch of troopers are killed. They get in, and they're immediately under attack by separatist droid forces. They find the little baby Hutt. Anakin hates him, Ahsoka thinks he's cute, and Anakin's also like, this is some sort of trap. And it is, in fact, a trap, because Asajj Ventress is the person who kidnapped the little baby Hutt. She put him there in the monastery, and they're trying to set it up so that the Jedi look like they are kidnapping and being very cruel to this little baby slug. Anakin and Ahsoka just want to get Rota back to his father on Tatooine, but that is easier said than done. There's all sorts of, again, separatist droids. Anakin has to face off against Ventress. They get a ship. but then as they're flying away, they're attacked by vulture droids. The two of them alone have to go to Tatooine. Once there, they are in turn attacked by Dooku, who's on Tatooine because he's been negotiating with Jabba as well. But Anakin tricks him. Ahsoka got to Jabba's palace with the baby while Dooku was fighting Anakin. Jabba is mad. Jabba wants to kill everyone, but they prove that the Jedi were really trying to help. And so in the end, Jabba gives them the ability to go through the Outer Rim untarnished, which is something that Dooku was also trying to do with this ploy. It ends up working out well for the Jedi, but of course Sidious is like, well, we have other plans in place. So let's start with my favorite character here, the character who I think came across the best, and I was always excited to read about, and that was Captain Rex. I'd wondered sort of going into this how Karen Traviss was going to depict Rex, because I know she really likes clones, and he's our sole clone viewpoint character here. And I think she did the best job of all the characters with Rex, because he comes across as like a really great guy. I mean, that's also the gist I got from him from the TV show. Just like, he's loyal, he's smart, he's willing to do a lot for Anakin because he knows that Anakin is willing to do a lot for them. The 501st suffer a lot here. By the end, there's just Rex and 5 other guys left. But they really gave it their all and had some very cunning ploys in the book. And if other characters are more nuanced, more gray, Rex is unabashedly a good guy the whole time. We get Jabba's viewpoint, which is very interesting. I wasn't sure if we were gonna get Jabba's POV here, because while he is a character in the movie, he's more like the source of the quest that must follow. But we sort of see Jabba's a gangster, but Jabba is a fair bit smarter than he wants to appear to be. He can understand basic perfectly fine, but he lets his droid translate everything into Huttese to keep that separation between himself and the people that are talking to him. So he can understand what they're saying, even if he's not willing to admit it. And also the different things that people have questioned about Jabba, especially in Return of the Jedi. Like, if he's a giant slug, why does he have dancing girls? Is that Jabba is trying to present an image of strength to non-Hutts, to humans, to other humanoid people. And so he's trying to show how powerful he is and how much prestige and pull he has by having slave girls, having musicians, having all these bodyguards. Which personally, Jabba as a Hutt doesn't care about, but he wants to look good to others. And you do feel a little bit bad for Jabba here because he seems to really love his little baby slug. He's very upset when Rhoda is kidnapped and he just wants him back any way possible, but he's still going to not give too much up to whichever side brings his kid back. Anakin, of course, is the hero of the Clone Wars. His men love him. Everyone loves him. He just didn't always feel right to me in this book, and I think it's because of 2 things. The first is that Anakin is always like right on the edge of anger in the novelization of the Clone Wars. He sees ghosts of the Tuscans that he killed. He remembers the blood carver from Rogue Planet. He's like, do people not see the death on my hands? And he just has a very short fuse. And I feel like a little bit too short of a fuse for where we are in the timeline, that this is maybe 6 months into the Clone Wars. We've got a fair bit to go. We are not at Revenge of the Sith yet, but he feels very close to boiling over to Revenge of the Sith levels, and I feel like he wouldn't be here yet. That's gotta build. I think he has to go through more and experience more to get to that ready to break point. The second thing is that Anakin, in his internal monologues, always refers to Obi-Wan as Kenobi, and in fact has a lot of resentment for a Kenobi that, again, I think would feel a little more accurate in Revenge of the Sith and not in the Clone Wars, especially when so much of the Clone Wars was Anakin and Obi-Wan really connecting as friends, as colleagues. Even when he's Darth Vader, he calls Obi-Wan Obi-Wan. When Anakin is at his most upset and angry and rageful and frustrated in Revenge of the Sith, he still calls Obi-Wan Obi-Wan. And I feel like calling him Kenobi would be accurate for characters like Darth Maul, but not for Anakin, and seems to have this level of like resentment and aloofness that I don't think, number one, Anakin would have with Obi-Wan at this point in time, but would even have with Obi-Wan at all. I was surprised to find that we don't get Ahsoka's viewpoint or Obi-Wan's viewpoint or Padme's viewpoint in this book. In fact, it sort of felt like Obi-Wan and Padme were a little bit sidelined for other characters. That they are doing things here, things are going on, but we're never in their head. And in fact, Padme's big sequence where she confronts Jabba the Hutt's uncle on Coruscant, we see the very tail end of when Zero the Hutt captures her and then is talking to Count Dooku. I think the characters that get POV sections here make sense. I just sort of would have wished maybe for a little bit of Ahsoka, especially because all of Anakin's interactions with her seems to highlight the fact that, like, she's a predator, she has sharp teeth, and I'm like, I'm sure that Togruta were, but it's just a weird thing to highlight. Ahsoka is less annoying than she is in the film, but she is still pretty annoying. I'm sorry, Ahsoka. She's got to develop. Clone Wars movie Ahsoka is a really irritating young teenage girl. And then we have the viewpoint of our three villains here. We get Palpatine's POV, and unlike in episode 1 and episode 2, where I felt like the film was trying to hide the fact that Palpatine is Sidious, since we get Palpatine's internal thoughts, we know he's Darth Sidious, we know what he's up to, and in fact, he absolutely despises the Jedi. Master Yoda's there, and he's like, ugh, Master Yoda. I was surprised, though, that Palpatine was taking a message from Jabba the Hutt. I would think the Supreme Chancellor is far too highly ranked to converse with a Hutt gangster. Like, that's something that you would delegate to someone lower down. I don't doubt that he would get involved in this because he's pulling strings left and right on both sides, but I don't think he would talk to Jabba himself. Our second villain is, of course, Count Dooku, who's doing the will of his Sith master. He wants Jabba's son to be kidnapped and then the Jedi to be blamed so that Jabba will side with the Separatists. Dooku does not want the baby Hutt to be killed, which is where his viewpoint differs from that of his assassin, Asajj Ventress. Asajj, to a certain extent, also felt a little off to me in this book. I think it was just the sheer repetition of how she hates the Jedi because they let her master down, which I would agree is like a pivotal part of Ventress's character, but I'm not sure that it would be like the one point she constantly dwells on over and over and over again. She also seems to have this connection/friendship with the spy droid that Ahsoka decapitates when they find the ship and flee Teth. And she's like, that droid, we lost a good man. And I'm like, lady, there was no indication to me that like you had this deep connection with this droid at all. We didn't see very much of him before his head got cut off. Maybe it's been a droid that we had seen accompany her for many different missions, but like this is the first time I've ever seen this spy droid before. Ventress's mission is to kidnap the baby Hutt, frame the Jedi, and then bring the baby Hutt back. When that fails, and Dooku is, can't kill it, you can't kill it, she 100% is, too bad, I'm gonna kill the Jedi and the baby Hutt. Fortunately, she does not succeed in that matter. So I remember hearing from different people that the Clone Wars movie is not very good, but that the Clone Wars novelization is very good, so much better. And I feel like, while I would agree that the Clone Wars novelization is better than the film, I don't think it's really good. I don't think this is in Revenge of the Sith novelization tier. This isn't even in the Phantom Menace novelization tier. I think it's just hard to get away from its source material, which is an animated film, which was originally episodes of a TV show intended for children. Even with Karen Travis's framing devices, like we see Jabba the Hutt's unfortunate child kidnapping from the very beginning, it just still feels very episodic, like the Battle of Christophsis is just there to introduce Ahsoka. And then when we get to all the stuff on Teth, I just felt like it wasn't fleshed out in a way that I would have expected an adult novelization to be. Like, this monastery. Who's it a monastery for? Who's the people who used to have it? It sounds like it was originally belonged to someone else, then Hutts took it over because there's like a Hutt dais and courtyard and stuff. But like, what Hutt took this over? Is it connected to Zero the Hutt because he was also in on this kidnapping attempt with Dooku? Maybe, but not confirmed there. And I feel like the novel is more focused on the beats of the story, and especially the way it unplays feels like a TV show to me. That danger resolved, danger resolved, danger resolved until the final climax. And I think, too, my issues with the Clone Wars movie and TV show and novelization, and presumably with the other related books as well, by the Karens to come, is that there was this definite effort in this time period of the expanded universe that they were like, no, this fits into the EU. This fits into the EU. How it fits is that Multimedia Clone Wars project takes place before the Clone Wars 3D animated show starts, and you're like, what? And I just wish that from the beginning they had taken like a multiverse approach and been like, hey, you saw one story of the Clone Wars, here's another one. Because I think trying to make this fit within the expanded universe books and comics that already exist isn't a good idea. It's not gonna work. You're gonna have to do a lot of retconning and explaining to make it fit in. And I'm not just talking about the presence of Ahsoka, that Anakin has a Padawan here, that Anakin is knighted long before he was knighted in Jedi Trial, but all the other stuff that ends up getting overwritten by the cartoon. I just wish it was like its own separate continuity, and I think a lot of people's problems with it might have been solved by that. I also wish that why they're helping Jabba had been dealt with a little differently. I do like getting the two perspectives of Anakin and Ahsoka with little baby Rhoda, that Anakin lived under Hutt slavery. He can't even smell them without feeling mad. That he would never in 1,000 years help Jabba the Hutt, help someone who has this culture of enslavement on the world he's from, whose wealth comes from the suffering of others. The Jedi Order tells him to do it, so he's doing it, but he's not happy. And then we have Ahsoka, who sees baby Rhoda and says, but he's just a baby. But he hasn't done anything wrong. He's sick, he's hurt, he doesn't know what's going on. We need to help him. And like, you can see where both of them are coming from. Why are the Jedi helping Jabba track down his kidnapped baby? It's not solely out of the goodness of their heart, and I'm fine with that because, again, Hutts, they're gross, they're bad, they're lawless, they live outside of the Republic. But apparently it's because they want to move around the Outer Rim and they need Hutt permission to do so. And it's like, the Hutts are outside of the Republic. Why do you need anything from them to be able to do that? Maybe this would have made more sense to me if, like, the Hutts have hyperspace routes through the Outer Rim that other people don't have, so they could use these and it would help their strategy, help them win the war against the Separatists. Like, that would make sense to me, that like there is some knowledge that at this point the Republic does not have, that they should help track down a kidnapped baby even if he is a disgusting slug. But also there is like a key strategic reason why they should also do this, which will help with the war effort against the Separatists. But no, it's just like, we just need permission from Jabba? And I'm like, why? They're outside of the Republic. What does this matter? Originally, this was not meant to be a grand, sweeping, theatrical event, but a television show. And so it feels small scale because it was originally intended to be small scale. And I'm not sure this was the best way to kick off the Clone Wars 3D animated show. Number one, the animation style was very contentious at the time. Very stylized, meant to remind you of the Thunderbirds TV show. People saw Revenge of the Sith in theaters in 2005, and then they come into theaters 3 years later, they see this, which is not the same caliber, and I just think it's unfair to the Clone Wars to expect it to be so and to have presented it as if it were so. So, in short, like the movie that it accompanied, the Clone Wars novelization kicks off this new, very different era of the Clone Wars. However, compared to the film, we get a lot more interior stuff here. Since we're in different characters' viewpoints, we're able to see their thoughts and really get their reactions to events and situations. I really like what Karen Traviss did with Rex's character. I was less impressed by what she did with Asajj Ventress and especially with Anakin, just because they felt a little off to me. I think where the novelization suffers is also where the film suffers, in that it doesn't feel sweeping, it doesn't feel novelistic, it feels episodic, which you would expect from what was basically 4 TV show episodes smushed into a movie with connecting scenes added. I think that the novelization is better than the film, but I don't think it rises to the level of some of the other prequel era novels. So next time I'm going to be reading another video game adaptation. This one about Vader's secret apprentice, Starkiller: The Force Unleashed by Sean Williams.